Welcome to Corner of the Galaxy, the show that talks 100% LA Galaxy soccer. We're glad you could join us. Now it's time to sit back and relax as your hosts navigate through the twisting, turning, but never boring world of the five-time MLS Cup champion, LA Galaxy. And now, here are your hosts, Josh Guesman and Wendy Thomas.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Corner of the Galaxy on cornerofthegalaxy.com. I'm Josh Guesman along with Miss Wendy Thomas, recording on a Thursday night live in CoG Studios on September 28th. We're glad you could join us. A lot of LA Galaxy information, news to talk about. LA Galaxy and their 3-3 draw with the Houston Dynamo. But before that game's even over, the LA Galaxy are eliminated from the playoffs. We'll have thoughts on both of those things. We're also going to get you ready for the Real Salt Lake game. That's coming up on Saturday, September 30th, so a short turnaround again for the Galaxy as they end their 3-game road trip in Houston and now head back home for Real Salt Lake. Second to last game at StubHub Center in 2017. And then a lot of other things. We got your calls, we got your emails, a really packed show, so we'll do our best to get you through it, to move you through it. And of course, as the music just cuts out wonderfully. So as we will do our best to just get you through all this stuff. But before we do any of that, Wendy, why don't you give us your basic thoughts on what you saw on Wednesday night playing against the Houston Dynamo, and if there were any redeeming qualities whatsoever in the LA Galaxy that night?
Well, there were redeeming qualities in the sense that we scored 3 goals.
That was nice.
No. Technically, not true.
Yeah.
Technically, not correct. We scored 2 goals.
Yes. And
DeMarcus Beasley scored 1 goal for us. He's being very generous.
That was very nice of him, I thought, to sort of open the game that way, and not really his fault. But again, it was an interesting. That was there used to be a saying, or at least we coined a saying, on the show over the years, that crazy things happen in Dallas. I'm starting to believe that crazy things happen in Texas, because that game was absolutely nuts.
Yeah, had a whole lot of unpredictable elements, all from the formation to the starting 11 to, Houston got 2 goals from someone who's never scored from them before. Giovanni Dos Santos playing as a target forward. Gyasi Zardes is a right back now. There's all kinds of craziness going on in this game. Diop in goal.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened to John Kempen.
He, never made it. It didn't get to play in his hometown in Sporting Kansas City. Didn't play in front of his, hometown people, his friends, his family. Sigi put him on the bench for that game, and then in this game, he's not even in the 18-man roster. I guess this is the year of messing with goalkeepers for LA Galaxy, because that's what seems to be going on.
What is the goalkeeping story? There have been so many narratives about our goalkeeping situation this year. Why was Diop put in as opposed to John Kempen?
Kempen or Rowe or anybody? We don't know. We don't know. Sigi's.
Josh, you have all kinds of secret insights and knowledge and stuff that we don't have access to. So what do you really think? What is going on in the goalkeeping world? Because there was this, competition earlier in the season, with Kurt trying to create some sort of sense of that Brian Rowe and Diop would be vying for the number 1 position, and then they both sort of had crises of confidence and injuries and things like that, and then Kempen started playing well, and what exactly is the goalkeeping situation?
Well, I will say this. I think that it's well known now, at least in my mind, that in the beginning of the season, the LA Galaxy should have upgraded at goalkeeper, and I believe there were some in the organization that thought that in the offseason they should have. It certainly was another position that they wanted to upgrade at during the summer, and that didn't happen either. Whether that came from Sigi or whether that came from Kurt Onalfo, in either way, we all know that the LA Galaxy, and Landon Donovan said it against Sporting Kansas City, that the Galaxy are looking to upgrade at that position. So if you're looking at what is happening with Diop and what would happen with Kempen and those types of things, you have to think that Sigi Schmidt is trying to figure out who he's going to keep and who he's going to get rid of. And the only way to do that is to play these guys in games and see how they react. And so he's given Diop the last 2 starts. In my opinion, Diop has played himself right out of a starting spot, and right out of probably a backup spot. May not be with the LA Galaxy next year, or if he is, he may be down with LA Galaxy too. It's interesting that it's gone that way, but you look at it. John Kempen's not even on the bench, so and it was a coach's decision. He wasn't injured. So there was no reason for him to be on the, not even on the bench, and there was no reason for him not to be there. So you have to think that Sigi has made up his mind about John Kempen. And that he doesn't need to see him anymore, and that maybe it's Rowe and Diop down the stretch here, so that way he can figure out who he wants to keep. And Diop has, the kid comes off his line so often, Wendy, and misses plays so often that it's just sort of and his decision making is horrible. He got bailed out by the referee twice in the Houston game. It's one of those things you look at and he goes, yes, he can be extremely talented, and you certainly can see some of that, but his decision-making for me just makes him a no-go in terms of a goalkeeper for the LA Galaxy or anything else. And if Sigi's thinking the same thing, then I wouldn't be surprised if you see another switch whenever it comes to Real Salt Lake. So that's sort of what I think our thinking is that Sigi's trying to figure out who's playing and who's not playing. It's one of the reasons that maybe Hugo Ariano comes in and starts in place of Michael Ciani. Ciani obviously signed to play the center-back role, has had a baptism by fire and probably isn't 100% fit and still working on trying to piece together a back line that's put together with glue and duct tape right now. And so that's another coach's decision that's put off. And you have to think that Ariano was put in there either because Ciani was just too tired after playing all the back-to-back games the Galaxy have had and, isn't quite into his fitness yet, or it's because Sigi wants to try out Ariano and see if he's going to be a viable backup going into next year. So that way they can start to make evaluations on who they're going to go after.
So what I'm hearing from you in a sort of sub-Rosa way is it sounds like the fact that the Galaxy have been mathematically eliminated from the possibility of competing in the playoffs has actually gives Sigi a fair amount of liberation in terms of his ability to engage in radical experimentation.
There's certain elements of that.
Yeah, because if he's essentially using the remainder of the season as a baptism by fire in terms of auditioning players for their future careers with the LA Galaxy, then he's just rotating players around, seeing who's worth keeping, who's worth getting rid of. So in that sense, okay, so we should probably expect to see a lot of rotation over these last few games.
See, I think that there's going to be less rotation than you think, and he's already been doing this, so it's not because they've been mathematically eliminated. As I think Kevin said, they were mentally eliminated about a month ago. So this has been an ongoing process, and you've seen it. I mean, Zardes started it right back against Sporting Kansas City, and, varying levels of success. Clearly, it's not his normal position. Could it be a position he plays for the rest of his career in Major League Soccer and beyond? It actually could. I think it could. But at the same time, it's still a gamble. He's been doing these things. He's been, putting Giovanni Dos Santos, trying to keep him higher up the field. He basically had almost the same lineups, or at least the same formation in back-to-back games. It's just a matter of some of the personnel change with Ariano coming in, with Garcia coming in for the injured Joao Pedro, and Jermaine Jones making his way back onto the field after suspension. So, I mean, some of those things have happened. But in this Houston game, the Galaxy actually, with this lineup, when he started very well, they got the own goal, which we've all already highlighted. But then the Alessandrini goal to put them up 2-0 was a beautiful, wonderful thing that I think LA Galaxy fans should hope, happens forever and ever. And unfortunately, it was created by a guy who I don't think anybody expects to be here next year in Ashley Cole.
Yeah. I mean, Cole's retiring.
We don't know that for sure, by the way. There's no official announcement, all right? And there's even talks of possibly bringing him back to the LA Galaxy next year, which would be interesting. I say trusting a 37-year-old body would be a gamble, but with the way he's played, he's been the best, most solid defensive player and probably one of the most consistent players in 2017. So, I mean, it's one of those. If you want to gamble on it, go ahead, but you're going to gamble on a 37-year-old body. But, I know Alessandrini posted the picture of his jersey and everybody flipped out. Yeah, that was really just a jersey saying everybody expects Ashley Cole's going to leave. So if you're an LA Galaxy player, and I've talked to some of them, I've said, hey, you better get your Ashley Cole kit signed now because I don't think that dude's coming back in 2018. Right. And he really is, and somebody argued, or at least raised the question. I said he's a footballing legend. If you look at what he has done in the course of his career, and especially at the end of it, how quietly he's gone about it, Wendy, but the guy is just shows up to work, does his thing, and at one time was the best left back in the England
world.
Yeah,
I mean, maybe he was when he was at Chelsea during the highlight of his career. He was one of the best left backs in the world.
Which is crazy that the LA Galaxy have him, and he's still able to perform to the level he has. And I'm doing everything I possibly can. I want you to know everything I possibly can to get Ashley Cole on this podcast before he goes, because quite honestly, he deserves it.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, gosh, I feel terrible though. I mean, in terms of ending a career,
Right.
this is just not the way you want to see like a legend retire.
No.
But it's not like he has anything to prove. I mean, goodness gracious, he's won the Champions League. He's done everything there is to do. Except England has never done anything. But with Chelsea, he always did really well.
Yeah, there's lots of English disappointment. All right, so that's normal. That's a normal feeling for English players.
Yeah. And what about Gyasi at right back? This we have not discussed. I am beside myself at this decision making. Like, it is so mysterious, and to take a player who has, and this is ironic, to take a player who has never played a defensive position in his life, who has heretofore played as a target striker or a winger, and convert him to a right back. What does that say about how Ziggy feels about the right backs we actually have?
Well, I mean, first of all, the right backs that you actually have who are starters are injured, and they have been. So you know, and I was talking to somebody, and they said, you know, how much obviously the Robbie Rogers injury really, you know, somebody said Robbie Rogers is really good at right back. I question that a little bit. I've never felt he was excellent at right back, but he filled the position, and he was a starter at that position, and that's certainly something you could say about that. The LA Galaxy go without a right back for the entire year, basically. They get Pele Van Aanholt. He gets injured as well. We've seen Nathan Smith there. We've seen Bradley Diallo. Bradley Diallo is the other person who can probably play in that position. It's not his normal position, and he's injured. So you have Van Aanholt who's injured. You have Diallo who's injured. You have anybody who's ever played right back for the LA Galaxy has basically been injured this year. And so you have Nathan Smith, or I guess you could try putting Hugo Arellano out there. I guess you could go down and get Josh Turnley, or I think the other kid, Turner. I think you could try them with LA Galaxy too, but I don't know that you're going to get better than quite honestly, what Gyasi Zardes gave you in the Houston game was probably pretty good if you're a Galaxy fan. It's just they don't have. There's two problems. One, the LA Galaxy don't have a healthy right back, and two, they are looking for a place to put Gyasi Zardes, because he's not scoring, he's not dangerous, he's not creating, he's not helping even whenever he plays midfield or anywhere else. So really, the bottom line is, hey, if you could play right back for us, we could keep you on the field. You can be dangerous with the field in front of you, which I think we saw some in this Houston game. And that means that we can also put another attacker out there like Bradford Jamieson, and he scores a goal and things like that. So, I mean, I think there's reasoning behind it. And it could be long-term reasoning, too, because I don't know if this year is just that Gyasi Zardes, or everybody has figured out Gyasi Zardes can't play, which seems like we would have figured that out earlier, right? But either they figured out Gyasi Zardes can't play, or that they don't have a position for him on this field because of the absolute overabundance of midfielders that are going to be playing in 2018. So I think this is a tryout for him in a position that maybe he might get used to.
Wow, it's just amazing. Because Nathan Smith is not injured, right?
He's not, but I don't know that he's absolutely draped himself in any glory anytime he's played right back this year.
No one has. I mean, I think that's kind of astonishing that when a coach elects to bench someone who is a defender and has played, 10 games for you as a right back in favor of someone who has never played the position before in his life. And this is a professional soccer team. I mean, it's not like this is a Sunday pickup game where you and I are playing. It's not like, hey, I'm going to, Josh, come on, play. Well, actually, you are a right back.
Yeah, I am. I can right back, right midfield. I can play that position.
Josh,
yeah, I could be out there.
Second.
Yes.
I think I've struck on a solution here.
Yeah, that would be a poor solution. Let me say, I have questions about the LA Galaxy scouting, but I don't think that they would be smart or stupid enough to put me on the field. So, however that happens.
I want to see it. I just think that's amazing. Because you're right. I mean, well, we know that Gyasi has enormous commitment. That he's very disciplined, and he cares a great deal about doing good jobs. So whatever position Ziggy puts him in, I think that he's gonna try and do his best. I mean, he's gonna try to work his hardest to do the very best job that he can. And since we apparently don't have anyone who is actually at the caliber of playing as a professional right back,
right,
who is healthy, suppose the only option is just to put in, I guess someone who's never done it before.
Well, I mean, it's difficult with any professional athlete. You know that they can play the game, and you know they have the athleticism for it. So it's just a matter of whether or not they can wrap their mind around playing a different position. And I always thought that defenders were really good at playing other positions because you always got to see everything that was in front of you, so you could understand how movement affects things. I always thought moving backwards was more difficult, but you've seen Graham Zusi do it, move back from that right midfield to right back.
I'm not wild about that though for the U.S. national team. I don't think that's necessarily good.
Sigi Schmidt actually has a history with this. I think if you go back to Chris Albright with the Galaxy, was a forward and got moved into the right back position and ended up playing there. So I mean, it's not unheard of in LA Galaxy land, or at least it's not unheard of in soccer for this particular conversion. Everybody just knows that it's a long-term conversion if you're going to do it. And Sigi has made a point of saying that Gyasi is really helping us out. That's what Sigi has said, helping us out at this position right now because we don't have somebody there. But what Gyasi Zardes is really doing is helping himself out, because if he's not going to play at right back, I'm not sure he has a spot on the field right now.
Right. His position is sort of unknown because he's not really a target striker. He's not really a winger. He's not really a lot of things.
Which is the same thing you could say about Giovanni Dos Santos, by the way. So
what is Giovanni Dos Santos? What is he?
No, I don't think he knows. I don't think anybody knows. Whatever he is.
I was reading there was something on Twitter where someone tweeted out, do you know the number of coaches who've driven themselves crazy trying to figure out what position suits Giovanni Dos Santos? He's like, Ziggy, if coaches at Tottenham, in La Liga, if these coaches can't figure it out, what chance does Ziggy Schmidt have?
No, I mean, there's certainly something to that, and it all comes down. And this is about figuring out where people can play. Bradford Jamieson got a goal. He's been playing very well, and it's really good to see him getting the minutes and playing. But, I mean, listen, let's pretend for a second that the Audi index that gets put out, let's pretend for a second that it's that it's actually means something, right? Yeah, I know. I went and looked at it. Well, I was talking to some people close to the team, let's say, and I was saying, I really think these guys had a good game. And they said, yeah, they did. And they're like, but there's no numbers that are going to prove that out. And I said, okay. And then somebody said, hey, check out the Audi index. And they're like, do you think anybody ever uses that? And I say, no, because it's ridiculous index. It doesn't skew. It skews offensively and it doesn't skew defensively. So sometimes, but if you looked, the LA Galaxy's top 4 players, 3 of them were defenders. Gyasi Zardes was the top one. Dave Romney was the other one. Ashley Cole was on there, and then Roman Alessandrini. So those were, and in that order, by the way. So, and Gyasi Zardes, and I thought that Gyasi Zardes played a very good game at right back, and granted, I think that Houston was completely confused as to what they were trying to do for the first 80 minutes. I don't know if they thought that they didn't have to show up against the Galaxy or what was happening, because they looked horrible. And the Galaxy, on the flip side of that, looked like they belong in La Liga with facing off against Barcelona with the passing that they had through the midfield at times. I'm like, look at this passing. Where did this come from?
Well, I wouldn't go too far with that. I thought actually there was stretches of the game where Houston appeared to be much the better team, and that the Galaxy was pretty fortunate.
Well, no. I mean, this whole game, the Galaxy is fortunate. I mean, that's true, but in stretches they passed through the midfield and around Houston like they were traffic cones, which was good because orange is a good color for a traffic cone. So all those things. But when you go back and you look at the stats, I think, and I will stand by this, I think Gyasi Zardes played a good game at right back. I think Dave Romney played a good game at center back. I think Ashley Cole played a good game on defense. And who had the 2 biggest mistakes to allow the last 2 goals were Dave Romney and Gyasi Zardes, and I understand that. But the other flip side of that, Wendy, is there were 27 shots by Houston in this game. 27, 8 on goal, okay? 27, and 14 corners, with the majority of those corners coming in the last 10 minutes. Right?
That's crazy.
The defense was being bombarded for, at least the last 20, 30 minutes, and even in the first half. 2 posts. I mean, a goal that got called back because, and Ariano and Diop making, just mincemeat of whatever play they were trying to make. It was just ugly and got bailed out by one of the world's worst referees. And Dynamo head coach Wilmer Cabrera even came on afterwards and just blasted the referee, which I always like to see. But absolutely 100% deserved. You didn't know what was a foul in this game, what was a yellow card, what was a red card. There should have been red cards and yellow cards on both sides, and nothing sometimes. And then little ticky-tacky fouls get called.
So when a team When a team is permitted to put 27 shots on goal, what does that say about what was going on in front of the LA Galaxy's back line? What does that say about what was going on in front of them that Houston was able to put 27 shots on goal?
I'm convinced, at least in my mind, you can tell me if you agree with this, but I'm convinced that the LA Galaxy's midfield, at least how it's currently constructed and how they're playing, is incapable of holding the ball. For most times, they had some good. There was some good movement here, but for the most part, is incapable of holding the ball, and any forward that they give it to is also incapable of holding the ball. And because of that, the defense is constantly put under pressure, and the bad turnover thing is really a thing with the LA Galaxy. The turnovers in the middle third of the field that end up leading to breaks by Houston or by any other team, because the Galaxy have conceded so many goals this year, it's almost laughable. They're getting ready to set a new franchise record for goals conceded. So
who is the particular culprit? Who is coughing up possession?
I would certainly love to point at one person, and I'm not sure it is one person.
We'll point at multiple people, but you know.
Well, I think Giovanni Dos Santos doesn't do a good job of holding the ball up whenever he's up top. I think the fact that he drops back into midfield so often causes problems. I thought the Galaxy were most dangerous whenever Giovanni Dos Santos was actually pressed up high on his line, as Sigi has wanted him to be the last two games, and especially the out wide pressed up high. So get him. He had a couple runs that he started from the extreme far left-hand side of the attacking third, and he was pressed right up against the Houston line. So he's stretching that line, and I love to see strikers, especially up top strikers, move to one side or the other to give themselves diagonal runs and behind people. And I think Giovanni Dos Santos could be so dangerous with that. And you saw even in the ball that he got, granted it came from a deeper position and it wasn't a diagonal run, but he was able to fake out two Houston defenders and pass off to Bradford Jamieson, who finished. I mean, it was perfect. That's what you want to see from them, and that's the kind of plays that you want. But I don't know. Jonathan Dos Santos played, I think, really well in this game. I think he was a good player, but I don't know how I feel about him yet. Just in terms of everything, but he broke up a play. He created the second goal for the Galaxy.
What do you think of Jones and Garcia?
I mean, Garcia is in there obviously, and we know why, because Joao Pedro's injured, and that's it. I don't know. Garcia is a backup. I really like him. I like him as a person, but overall he had some poor moments. But he was, and Kobe Jones said it after the game. He did do the job that he was put in to do there, which was try to break things up in the midfield and do some of those things. But he's not the starter that you want. You probably want Joao Pedro there, although, even with Joao Pedro, it's sort of mixed bag of what you're going to get right now. So, I mean, that's fine. I thought Jermaine Jones was fine. I didn't have any problems. Again, there were actually a bunch of good performances by the Galaxy in this game. But when you look at it as a whole, Wendy, you have to look at it and say that the Galaxy were very fortunate to get a draw in this game. And then
27 shots is a lot of shots. That's quite a lot of shots.
They outpossessed Houston, which you would expect, because Houston is a counterattack team. They clearly ran out of gas in the second half, and I think some of that has to be put at Sigi Schmidt, who waited a very, very long time to make the second and third subs in this game.
And Houston is just difficult. I mean, a lot of players have problems playing in Houston.
They do, and it was hot and muggy, and the field was in pretty bad shape. But also pretty good shape considering the flooding that they've had and all the issues that they've gone through. So we're not gonna harp on it too much. But the field was bad. I mean, all those things, and it all sort of added up to these different players having good games. And overall, I think if you're the Galaxy and you're on the bus and you're leaving Houston, you're mad that you didn't get the 3 points because you were winning 3-1 in the 80th minute and the 84th minute. And the marking and the mistakes from Romney and Zardes were, catastrophic in both cases. But you also have to think that was one of the better games that you played. I really believe that. And I think the Galaxy played very well in stretches. And I learned something. Do you want to hear something that I learned that I didn't know?
Yes, I definitely want to hear what you learned.
I think this is really interesting. I was complaining about the Galaxies, or not complaining, but just sort of lamenting the fact the Galaxy have had a really tough stretch run down this last 3 weeks of the season or whatever, and all these games back to back, Wednesday, Saturday,
last
Wednesday,
9 months or so.
Yeah, Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday. It's great. It's a lot, and you can see it taking its toll on the players, and especially in that second half. And I said, how tough was it for the league to put the Galaxy in that position? And I was told this very specifically, is that is a general manager's job. A GM's job is to argue with the league whenever they see stretches of games like this. And so there is room in Major League Soccer for GMs to go to battle and get schedules changed.
That's fascinating.
That is very fascinating, which means that if you have a stretch of games like this, then you can put at least some blame or at least point a finger at a general manager in this case. So
I bet Bruce was great at that.
I mean, it's sort of the comparison between Bruce Arena and Pete Vianis, and I agree with you. I remember the Galaxy specifically having these games and not only getting them changed during the middle of the season, but also other things. And the Atlanta game got shifted around too. Let's not forget that one got bumped to later in the season. So that was the game that was the extra one in this that probably is really going to break the camel's back whenever you look at it. But I did not know that the GM at least had room, or at least was tasked with trying to massage the schedule in their team's favor.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's really interesting that you get to be an advocate for a preferential schedule. That's very interesting.
Yeah, I thought it was as well. Let's see. I'm trying to think if there's anything else in this game. I mean, there's lots of stuff that happened. Ramon Alessandrini with the 11 goals. Now 11 goals, 10 assists. He's the second player in Major League Soccer to be at double digits in both categories. Lee Win is the other player to reach double digits in both of those categories. So I think that's interesting. And Ramon has been nothing but excellent this year. It
certainly has been. Imagine where the team would be without him.
He has scored or had a hand in, I should say, have a hand in, because he's had a hand in 21 goals, and the Galaxy have scored 40. So he's had a hand in more than half of the LA Galaxy goals. Yeah,
half of our goals.
That's great.
That's amazing.
It really is. And for a guy, and we've heard about internationals who come over and they're not successful in Major League Soccer. And Roman came over and he struggled for the first 2 or 3 games, and there were like 20 of you who wanted to send him back to France.
No.
Yeah. I still remember those tweets. That's great. I remember. There were people who were ready to send
No, but you're right. I mean, it's true. A lot of players have a horrible time, a very difficult time adjusting to MLS. And he is an example of someone who not only transitioned beautifully to MLS, but did so during a season when the Galaxy are the worst they've ever been. I mean, it's remarkable. It's remarkable for anyone to transition in, but to perform so well against a backdrop which has been just littered with terrible performances. That's impressive.
No, it is. It is impressive. And again, you have to wonder why he's not wearing the armband at this point.
Yeah.
Because he's certainly...
Yeah. I mean, I would say him, Cole... I mean, those two are really the standouts for me this season. I love Emma Boateng.
Right, but he's not the leader. I'll tell you right now, he's not the leader in the locker room. I mean, you can tell who the leaders are. I would say Ashley Cole is a quiet, lead by example type of guy, and then Ramon Alessandrini is a fiery guy. He's a lot more like Robbie Keane than anybody else on this roster, and so for me, Ramon Alessandrini, and now I really feel like the language barrier is going away. It certainly is, but plus he can cuss you out in French if he really wants to, so that's always good too. If that's a swear word in France, and I have to figure out how to go back.
No, it's not. It's saying like "gosh darn it."
Okay, all right. I was gonna say, do I have to bleep a French swear word? That would be a new one for me.
Would you even have to bleep it if I used a French swear word? Really?
I don't know. I don't know what the rules are.
Right.
I mean, I would imagine.
I won't curse in French then.
Yeah, there you go. That's a good idea. No cursing. No cursing. I know people get really upset about that, but I do have like 15, 16-year-old kids who watch this, and I know they know those words, but their parents will get mad at me if that started being a thing. All right. So and trust me, I work in construction. I know how to swear. So anyway, that's where we go. You go 3-3. Clearly disappointing. The LA Galaxy didn't get the win, and they were there and they were positioned to get it, and you thought maybe they could. The result has nothing to do with them getting eliminated from the playoffs. Wendy, FC Dallas beat Colorado 2-0. So sometime in the second half, the LA Galaxy got eliminated from the playoffs, and that was it. No more playoffs. They don't get to go. It's the first time since 2008. It's only the 4th time in their history that they have been, or that they won't see the postseason, which, by the way, is kind of amazing. 22 seasons, only 4 times have they missed the playoffs, and 2006, 2007, and 2008 were those years. So it's if you think that the LA Galaxy can come back, and certainly I think they can, just remember 2006, 2007, 2008, the sort of doldrums of the LA Galaxy's franchise there, where nothing happened. There's no rule that says the LA Galaxy have to bounce back in 2018, and I don't mean that to discourage people, but it means there's a lot of work to be done. And I'm not sure the pieces are here. It's not like you're looking at a team, Wendy, that you're like, there's some really good pieces, and all they need is a few things. I mean, they're basically going to need a whole new back line. And then you're going to have, and then probably a new goalkeeper, and then probably a striker, and you have to figure out where to play 7 midfielders in 4 spots. So there's lots of things that have to be figured out in the offseason, and for this game at least, they had some positives and there's some negatives, and it just sort of leads you to the next game. I mean, nobody's surprised that the LA Galaxy got eliminated from the playoffs.
No, that was not a surprise.
All right, let's go.
Let's go to some calls.
I was going to say, we have a ton of them, so let's go to some of them. Let's go to Alex in Los Alamitos. He was actually at the game, so here's Alex.
Oh, cool.
Hey, Josh and Wendy, this is Alex from Los Alamitos, although I'm calling from Houston. Just got back from the game, actually. Live about 40 minutes away from the stadium. And, wow, I mean, that was interesting. Sat next to the guy from the Peel podcast, which was pretty cool. But, man, I was preparing what to say around the 60th minute, and then everything changed. I think one of the biggest problems was we hunkered down way too early. I looked at the clock. It was 64 minutes and 20 seconds, and looked at my wife and said, "This is too early to start doing this." And in the back of my head, I knew right then we weren't getting the 3 points. And yeah, I think it was a little bit like the Seattle game, though. I mean, I think we're lucky to come out of it with a point, and we shouldn't be too disappointed. But I mean, Ariana deserved a red. Gio showed up for once. I mean, unless there's a Mexican national team call-up I don't know about, I was surprised about that. But I think AEG knows at this point that the $7 million that he and Jonathan have tied up are better spent elsewhere. I mean, that was a hell of a finish, and in not a good way. But it is what it is. We still got a point. Great show. Keep it up.
All right, there's Alex. Interesting sort of take.
He's an LA fan who moved to Houston.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Not
bad.
An
insider then.
Yeah, of course. He was there. He got us all the information. I think the only sort of question I would say is, do I think the LA Galaxy bunkered down in the second half?
Well, when you when you bunker down, that opens up the team, for a defensive onslaught. Like you said, it looks like our defensive line was under fire and a constant barrage of shots, and that is something that does have a tendency to happen when you bunker.
I agree with that. Here's my take on it, is that I think the Galaxy were tired and they looked tired. So I'm not sure they had a choice, either one, to bunker, or two, to try and press all that much. There just wasn't a lot there, and there has not been a ton of rotation in this squad, despite the fact that we've named bunches of players who have played and haven't played. There's not a bunch of healthy still bodies here, Wendy, that are going to be able to come in and provide some relief minutes for other people. And so the guys who are playing are tired. And if you're worried about anything, and somebody cautioned me against this, if you're worried about anything, the last time the LA Galaxy went on a string of games back to back to back, their ultimate game the penultimate game that they played was that Real Salt Lake game on July 4th. And that was a 6-2 loss. And so you're playing RSL at home after a string of back-to-back-to-back games in the middle of the week. There was no rotation then. There's very little rotation now. What are you going to get out of these guys? That's an interesting thing for me, at least, to take a look at least that. Let's go to another call. Unless you have anything else, Wendy, did you want to
No,
comment?
I'm happy that I know how we have that fan in Japan.
Yes.
So we should pluck little Galaxy fans all over the country, and then they can go in as subterfuge at other games, and then report back to us.
I just got an email from somebody, and they will remain nameless because they didn't want me to name this, but they are, let's say they live in another state. Mm-hmm. They belong to a supporters group of a team that's close to them.
Uh-huh.
But they're diehard LA Galaxy fans. Yeah. And they emailed me and they were like, "I just want you to know that I love the podcast and all this, but hey, don't use my name. I don't want people to know."
How scandalous.
Right? Isn't that? It's kind of cool. They're on the inside, and the person, I guess, whenever they were admitted to this supporters group, they're like, "Yeah, well, we know you're from LA, but you don't like the Galaxy." And he was like, "Oh, me? No, like the whole thing." And like, you got to understand that, because just there's no tolerance for any of that. But secretly inside, this guy's like, I diehard Galaxy fan. Like, I won't even go to the other team's games if there's like
his heart belongs
conflict
to another.
That's right. It's love, Wendy. It's love. That's
love.
What it is. All right, let's go to Brian in Hawaii. Brian says the LA Galaxy.
We have a fan in Hawaii.
So we have fans all over. We had one in Atlanta. We have Houston. We have a fan in Salt Lake, I think. So yeah, we got a bunch. So here's Brian in Hawaii.
Hey Josh, this is Brian in Hawaii. So get the win, should have been a win, whatever. So I think Sigi needs to praise the team inside the locker room and out in public and the press. That team played with a lot of heart tonight. You saw it tonight. They were on the line. They wanted the win, and they fought for it. They did damn well, and that was evident by the passing, and all credit to Allison Draney. Him breaking up all those little scuffles and pushing his own players away just to get the game rolling. True leadership right there. Give that man the captain's armband again because he damn well deserves it. But honestly, Houston won that game. We look at the own goal. We looked at the disallowed goal, the 2 post strikes, all the shots. Houston had that game. So finally, for the first time in the season, it looks like luck was finally on the Galaxy side. Hopefully this is a catalyst for something positive for the rest of the season. And going into 2018, let's see where this goes.
All right, there we go. Brian in Hawaii doing a great job with that one. I agree with him in a lot of ways. I do think that Houston should have won that game. I think we said it already, Wendy. The Galaxy. I will say I don't know if they got lucky. They got lucky in certain aspects. I think it was just really poor officiating. I can't lean off of that. And again, I have a bias against referees for some reason. But and by the way, there are people who say that they can convert me to being a referee lover, and I don't think I need that in my life. So I'm not gonna go there with that one.
Poor officiating in MLS? Yeah, it's so strange. I've never heard of that before.
No, no, that's ridiculous.
The heck you say. The heck you say.
That's right. Let's go to Jack in Upland. Jack has a longer call, but let's hear Jack out talking about the Houston game as well.
Okay.
Hey, Josh, this is Jack calling from Upland after last night's game. You know, after the last few podcasts and after watching the Galaxy, we've spent a lot of time just wringing our hands with kind of collective angst about how awful this season has been, and it has been. But I think now it's time for us to move forward. And last night, despite the fact we squandered the lead, there were some real bright spots last night that I think we need to focus on going forward. I mean, Bradford Jameson, what an amazing job last night. This has been a season where we've been able to try out some of the young talent, see how they can do, and we've seen some real bright stars. He's won. Kempen has shown us in the goal that he's somebody that, paired up perhaps with another keeper that can do really good things. Rami and Steris, 2 other guys I think we really need to celebrate this year. And of course, Ramon Ellison-Reedy, he's somebody that we can really build a team on going forward along with Emma. And others. I mean, Van Aanholt, while he got injured, he's showed real promise this season. And I know you've been kind of down on Jonathan Dos Santos, but he's also somebody I think if we can keep him next season as somebody we can build on. So sure, the management messed up this year, but I think they're smart guys. I think they can learn from their mistakes this year. They've done a good job hiring 2 really, really good coaches with a proven track record. So I think, I'm optimistic about next year. This is an up and down league. Last year, Chicago and Dallas were kind of in the dumps. They're doing okay this year. So I guess, bad season, but we can learn from it. And I just hope at the next 2 home games that Galaxy fans come out and really show their support for this team, because we've had some really hardworking guys this season who have shown a lot of promise. We have some who haven't, but we need to come out for those guys who have done a really good job this season and show our support the next 2 games. Good show. Thanks.
All right, there we go. Jack from Upland, appreciate the call. He had a lot of good things. Again, you can tell, Wendy, that there was more positive in this game than negative, because you get some positive feelings from callers whenever they call in. And so, I don't know. I think if you're a fan, if I'm going to tell you how to feel, I would say you should be upset that the Galaxy conceded the 2-goal lead, with 20 or 10 minutes left to go in the game. That being said, there were a lot of positives, and I think Jack sort of hit on a bunch of those. So what do you, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I definitely think, my thoughts and attention have sort of turned forward in terms of, this season, I'm going to just say it's a wash, and I'm interested in sort of what is going to be the lesson. It was said that insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So we had a lot of experimentation and learning opportunities this season. And so hopefully everyone is going to just latch on to a lot of the lessons that we were given the opportunity to learn this season and look at what we can do next year. Obviously realizing there's going to be a lot of stuff that needs to happen in the off season. And hopefully hopefully Sigi has enough pieces to put together a team that's going to be competitive next year. And I think all Galaxy fans at this point are sort of the feeling of, let's take this, let's try and think of how we can learn from this.
Yeah, it is. You have to be able to learn from it. And I think we're learning things all the time. And I really think that, down the stretch here, you're seeing what Sigi's doing, that he's trying to learn these things. He's trying to get that experience and see these things. So that way he can make intelligent decisions about the offseason. And in just a little bit, I'm going to tell you about how the LA Galaxy acquire players. I'm going to be as straightforward as I can so that way y'all can stop harassing me on Twitter whenever I tell you something you want to argue with me. All right, so
you're not going to stop people.
Yeah, I know, but it's at least it'll make me feel better. I can at least be like, I already told you this. This is how it goes.
You'll never win. I know this for a fact. You will never win on Twitter because it's impossible to win on Twitter.
It's Twitter. Just give me 280 characters, Wendy. If I'm one of those 200, I think that they could just. I'm waiting Twitter for my 280 characters because that's going to change everything.
Sure, that'll change people on social media.
The best tweet I saw about it was, Twitter is a forum for brevity. And for all these years, we've learned how to do this brevity. And they said some other things and then they're like, and now I'm going to tell you why. One of 267. Right. And it was like, it's like that. It's like, it really is. It's like everybody complains about the added count that's coming. Right. But at the same time, how many of us haven't been like, oh, this is going to take me 4 tweets to write? So now it'll only take you 2 tweets to write. All right. So maybe that's fine. I think everybody will survive. We'll see. 280 characters, still readable as it's scrolling through my timeline. All right. Let's go to another call. We're done with the Houston calls. Let's get to some of the general stuff that we have. Let's hit Hector in Riverside.
Good afternoon, Josh. It's Hector from Riverside. I just found out Carlo Ancelotti from Bayern Munich got fired. Do you think there's a chance the Galaxy could be a little bit ambitious and maybe go after him? Okay, that's all I have. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hector keeping it sweet and simple. All right, Carlo Ancelotti.
We are not going to get Carlo Ancelotti. However, I did notice this morning that he was fired.
Yeah.
I think that Bayern is probably going to go in for someone like Thomas Tuchel, or maybe someone else. But I mean, maybe Hector is prompting us to address another issue, which is if we can't get someone like Carlo Ancelotti, should we be aiming to get someone who is a big name from a European league, something like that? What do you think?
First of all, hard pass on Ancelotti to the Galaxy. Even if he wanted to come, I think I would pass.
Why would you pass in Carlo Ancelotti?
I think his head would explode once you had to try to explain that he couldn't just get the players that he wanted, and there's a salary cap.
You can't just buy players.
Yeah.
That's a problem.
A little rude gullet for rude hullet. I always say it wrong. Rude hullet for people, saying, well, why can't we just buy players? It's like, well, that's not how it works in Major League Soccer. That's sort of my big problem. I will say this: it certainly depends on. I like the personality, and somebody said go after him because he can bring in the top talent, and certainly that is a possibility. Here's the problem with the Galaxy. They have no room for top talent right now. So, in terms of designated players, they have them all filled, and I don't anticipate anybody going anywhere. And if that's the case, then, then what good is that going to do you? I think that Sigi Schmidt is perfectly capable of, coaching the team that is going to be put on the field for him this year. I don't disagree with, there's 2 things I don't like. I don't like blanket statements. We should get a manager from South America. We should get a manager from Europe. We should get a manager who... So in this case, it's at least Carlo Ancelotti. So you can sit there and at least, weigh the factors of him coming in. But, when you had somebody like Tata Martino at Atlanta, Wendy.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's worked for Tata Martino just fine.
It has. But he was the right guy in that right spot, right? So, I mean, you sort of have to look at these things by a case-by-case basis. So just saying, hey, we should get players from South America. Well, which players? Who should come in? Why would they be fit with the LA Galaxy? What is their bonus? What is the thing? Yes, I think the LA Galaxy should scout everywhere they possibly can. I think South America, I think Central America, I think Europe, I think, Russia, wherever you want to find. There should be LA Galaxy people out there looking for those diamonds in the rough that want to come play in Major League Soccer. All right, but at the same time, I'm just not a big fan of just saying this European, especially that big of a name from Europe. Wendy would give me pause that it just wouldn't work out. That there's no room for someone like him in Major League Soccer, in my opinion.
It just probably wouldn't be a good marriage. I mean, he's not going to come.
Right.
And if he came, there's no guarantee he would be successful, particularly with respect to the issues that Ruud Gullit encountered. However, as Patrick Vieira has shown, as Tata Martino has shown, if you are committed to learning the system, then, a coach from abroad can be great.
Well, and you also have Carlos Bocanegra over there at Atlanta, who's done a great job. So I mean, you can help these guys, and I forget who the GM is over at New York City FC, but again, you can get guys who can help these coaches do things. So it's certainly not a blanket no. And if Carlo really wanted to come, I say, yeah, sure, bring him on over. But I mean, he's not coming. It's not going to happen. Let's see. We got 2 more calls here. Let's get through all of them, or at least maybe 3 more calls. Here's Andrew in Northridge talking about Landon Donovan's criticism and a little bit about Sebastian Lletget.
Hey, Josh, this is Andrew from Northridge. I'm listening to your Monday podcast, and we're talking a little bit about Landon Donovan's criticism about building up the spine. I have to wonder how much Sebastian Lletget's injury actually played into this. Being replaced by Emma Boateng is not a one-for-one replacement. Emma's a very north-to-south sort of player, meaning you kick the ball and he chases after it. Doesn't have a lot of creativity, doesn't have a lot of movement to the inside. You have to wonder that if Sebastian Lletget was there on the wing playing with Joao Pedro, Sebastian Lletget had a lot of success under Robbie Keane because he could give the ball to Robbie Keane and then just choose for himself where he wanted to run, whether he tucked inside underneath Robbie Keane or decided to open up a run to the corner to give Robbie some room. Lletget and Gio haven't really had that kind of opportunity to build that chemistry with each other, and I have to wonder how much his injury really did hurt the midfield this year. Love the show. Thanks for your time. Bye.
Well, I think there's an argument here, Wendy, that if Sebastian Lletget is healthy, the LA Galaxy don't go out and get somebody like Jonathan Dos Santos whenever they already have these midfielders in place. So, I mean, in terms of just the effect that Sebastian Lletget, and by the way, everybody sort of pegged him as having the breakout year. This was it. He was on the U.S. men's national team. He was looking good there. He was going to come to the LA Galaxy, and he was coming with a ton of confidence. His injury clearly affected this season, and obviously in a negative way.
Oh, huge. His injury is huge. It is maybe the single most impactful event for the LA Galaxy this season, I think.
Yeah, it very well may be, and who knows how the cards fall, and who's in coach, and who's the designated players, and all these other things that sort of fall and cascade down from that. So it's certainly something you have to take a look at. All right, let's move on. Again, I don't want to pass over the thing with Landon's criticism. Landon was 100% right, and I think that was the best Landon ever sounded, by the way. Landon, good job on the play-by-play. I'm actually looking forward to listening to him do the Russia games, in the World Cup and anything else that he does for any network. He's actually, maybe he's been practicing because he sounds good. So anyway, just a little Landon love there. Let's see. Let's go. Mike from Long Beach called in and asked about the injuries. With all the injuries, does he basically think that there's something more? And I'm going to paraphrase his call so that way we can just answer the questions. Is there something else here? Is there a problem with the trainers? Is there a problem with the medical staff? Is there something here? It's certainly a question, and that's about as far as I can. I'm not sure it's a question with an answer yet, Wendy. I haven't heard any of the players say that they feel like they've been overtrained or that the medical staff or the training staff is bad or poor. And certainly players who have a career and would look to something like that to blame if there were issues. So they haven't been telling me anything, which sort of leads me to believe that there's not anything there. And if you look at some of the freak nature of some of the injuries, it certainly has been freak nature and not necessarily a training issue. But there have been a bunch of hamstrings as well. So there's certainly a question there. I just don't know if I feel that there's an answer right now. So I don't know. It's one of those things. It's something that they'll look at, I think, in the offseason.
I've thought about this year, actually. I thought to myself, it does seem to be a disproportionate number of injuries this year, but Lletget got his on international duty. Van Aanholt has a history of terrible injuries. Robbie Rogers also history of terrible injuries. Jermaine Jones, we said in the podcast before he signed, he is likely to have an injury this year. So it's just like, is this a situation where the trainers or osteopaths or orthopedic people who are working on the team it could be that they are doing their job, but that we are selecting players where there's a significantly higher chance that they are going to sustain an injury because of previous injuries.
Yeah, and that's always a factor in it. And I think that there's probably more of that than anything else right now this year. It just feels like everybody gets injured every game. The fact that I think the Galaxy got out of Houston without an injury is probably one of the few bonuses, or another bonus to add to that game. So let's get to the last call here. Matt from Hawthorne. He is asking about João Pedro and a question that I'm not sure either one of us can answer, but let's listen to Matt. Here he goes.
Hey, Josh. It's Matt from Hawthorne. Love the show, as always. Just have one simple question. Can someone please conclusively tell me, once and for all, is João Pedro an 8 or a 6? It seems like he was brought in to be a 6 to partner in midfield with Jermaine Jones, but I think he's played the majority of his matches as an 8, and I think his best matches have been as an 8. But still, sometimes he comes as in a 6, and it doesn't seem like he's really a good 6 at all. So what's the deal? Is the guy a 6 or an 8? That's my only question. Thanks, man. Have a great show, you guys. See ya.
All right, so there we go. So the 6 or the 8, and I don't want to be the explainy person here, but just in case people don't know about positionings and how it works, because I occasionally have to look it up on occasion. I'm not saying I know all of these like by heart either, but you know, we understand sometimes withdrawn 9s or the striker position at the 9 or the 10 is the creative player.
Right.
So the 6 is the defensive midfielder and the 8 is more an offensive midfielder, or an 8 can also be a box-to-box.
An 8 is a central midfielder. If you think Steven Gerrard was a classic number 8. He was a player who is a distributor from the central of midfield who's designed to control the ball. A 6 is a defensive midfielder who stands in front of the back line and is designed to relieve pressure. If you think of a Steven Gerrard as a classic number 8, then a classic number 6 is someone like Kyle Beckerman or Roy Keane. A lot of people thought of as a number 6. Although I like to think of Kyle Beckerman as the truest number 6 that the U.S. men's national team has had in recent years.
I have a great 6 for you, Nigel de Jong.
Nigel de Jong, a great 6.
Yeah. So anyway, so we have people in the chat room saying, I only know 9 and 10 anyway. Yeah, they're all positions, and basically it is predicated around a 4-4-2, by the way, just in case you ever get into that. But there's other ways to formulate those outside of it, but the 4-4-2 is where these make the most sense, okay? Don't ask. I did a whole bunch of research before I did this because I'm like, I know the positions, but I don't know where they came from. So I actually went back and took a look at it. But anyway.
Oh, and there's a great section in Inverting the Pyramid, that the book on the history of tactics in soccer that explains the positions and their historical genesis.
That's a great pull right
there. It's a great book.
Yep,
yeah.
Absolutely. So that's really good. So anyway, is João Pedro a 6 or an 8? In your opinion?
Well, he said he wants a conclusive statement, and I cannot give him a conclusive statement.
I can't give it to him either. I was listening to this. I'm like, I don't know yet.
Conclusively. Because, well, first of all, this year has been so peripatetic in terms of the shifting dynamics of players being moved around and injuries and us being so bad that I don't know if we've seen João Pedro play a lot.
Right.
And remember, for the first, 5-10 games of the season, there are so many people convinced that he was terrible. And then people started to come around with him, and you're like, wait a second, no, maybe he's really good. And so since it's been so in flux, I honestly can't tell. I really can't.
I want to say it seems that so far with the LA Galaxy, he's been more defensive. But even as an 8, there's still some defensive responsibilities there. And so really you'd want to see more attacking from him if he's going to be that 8 that gets forward. And I'm not sure. He's somewhere between a 6 and an 8. How about that? We don't know.
God.
We don't know. I know it's horrible.
You know that's not what Matt wants to hear.
No, Matt, and I apologize. I mean, if I had a definitive answer, if I thought that somebody in the LA Galaxy had a definitive answer, I would answer that question or I would at least ask the question and then answer it for you. So I will try to get somebody to answer that question for me. All right. I don't know that they know either. So just giving you a heads up right now. And maybe that's another bad thing about the LA Galaxy this year. Maybe they don't know. Again, they have pieces, but they don't know where the pieces fit. I mean, you would think you would have.
What is Giovanni Dos Santos? Some people say he's a 10. I don't know. Is he a 10? I have no idea.
I don't feel like he's a 10, but he's certainly not a 9. So where does he play? It's Gyasi Zardes. Is he a striker? Is he a 9? He's not a 9 in my opinion.
I don't know what he is.
Is he a winger on the outside? Does that make you feel exactly?
I honestly don't don't know what Gyasi Zardes
Is he a right back? Yes, that's the answer. There we go. All right, let's get to a couple more emails, and then we're going to move on. A little bit longer show tonight, but I don't think anybody minds. I mean, the season is going to end in 3 games, so you guys are running out of time for getting absolutely on the dot every week LA Galaxy, Corner of the Galaxy podcasts here. The time is running short because Josh is going to get a little off season after this particular season is over.
You deserve it. Everyone who has been through this season
deserves
the off season.
That's right. All right. Listener question one more time, just from Daniel. Daniel asks, with Gyasi Zardes starting at right back, do you think he may be getting groomed to play as a wing midfielder of a 3-5-2? That could make a Romney, Ciani, and Steres back line, with Leggett as the other wing midfielder. Probably Alessandrini, Jonathan Dos Santos, and Joao Pedro in the center, and Gio, sadly. He puts that in there. I didn't add that. Gio, sadly. And a target striker up top. Let me know what you think. Listen, how do I say this without getting on a different rant that I want to get? You saw Sigi Schmidt play this particular formation, the 3-5-2, but it wasn't actually a 3-5-2. It was a 5-3-2 because he had Ashley Cole and Bradley Diallo as the wing midfielders, quote unquote, which were obviously more defensive than they are in the midfield. And so if you're going to do this right, the 3-5-2 is supposed to give you a lot of offense. That really is the bottom thing. But you need two-way players either on the outside or slightly inside in that midfield, and they'll be able to come back and cover the defensive position. So you really can switch from a 3 in the back to a 5 in the back, depending on how you attack. But you certainly expect the 5 to get forward into that attack. So a lot of times you can be left with 3 players out there. So could Gyasi Zardes be that guy? I think he could be, because it's really a midfield position that he's played. It's just a little more defensive responsibility. And he's always been a guy, Wendy, who tracks back. Whether or not he has the defensive skills to win the ball, he runs back and he puts in the work.
He will run as much as you want.
Absolutely. You have to tell him to stop, I'm sure. You know?
You have to say, wait, you've hit the end of the field. You got to turn back the other way.
Turn around. Go back the other way.
Turn around. Other way.
All
the
right.
other way.
David from Sacramento, my good friend David, also wrote in. Dave, I'm not going to have time to get to your lengthy email here, but I wanted to appreciate you. Thank you for writing in.
I liked his email. I thought it was interesting.
Is there a certain part of it that you would love to pull out? Because he is talking about the relationship with Sigi Schmidt and Dominic Kinnear and how that could possibly... Here, okay, we're doing it. See, this is here we go. We're doing it. Why not? All right, David writes in. He says, the subject is Sigi, possible GM plus protection. He says, hello, dearest Josh and company. I just got done listening to the Monday show on my way back to work and it got me thinking a lot of people like to compare things happening in different sports to each other. And your conversation about where Sigi Schmidt might eventually wind up got me thinking. Hypothetically, of course, let's say time passes and Sigi ends up assuming the role of general manager of the LA Galaxy, completely taking himself off the sidelines and the Galaxy promote Dominic Kinnear or someone from the outside. There was a situation similar to this hypothetical situation in the NBA. Phil Jackson, one of the greatest coaches in NBA history, Lakers fans obviously know that, Bulls fans know that as well, took over the role of president of the New York Knicks. They've been through a couple of head coaches, which brings me to my point. Phil Jackson eventually was fired from his position because he tried to influence the way the Knicks played from the front office. He tried to instill his triangle offense instead of letting the head coach of the Knicks do his job and coach the team the way he likes. I'm wondering if Sigi moving into a front office role would be similar to Phil Jackson in New York. If Sigi would basically try to structure the team or influence the way the team plays to the way he wants to see the team play instead of letting the head coach of the Galaxy do things the way that they want. I'd imagine if Dominic would be in charge, that would be less of a problem since they're on the sideline right now and have a similar way of thinking, how they want the team to play, but in a situation where the Galaxy would bring in a different head coach. So that's sort of the premise of his thing, of his email, is what happens there. I will tell you, I'll give you this, Wendy. I'll give you a little bit of this right now, and then you give me your thoughts on this particular situation. I would say that right now, the LA Galaxy general manager and the technical director, Pete Vianis, and Jovan Karofsky are making decisions about player personnel that are putting the coaches in difficult positions in terms of how they play those players. So if you're worried about this particular situation of Sigi coming up, I would say that it might be no worse than it is right now, which is not good. So that's certainly not a thing, in terms of if you wanted it to get a lot better. I think Sigi could be a very good general manager, but you need to find somebody who's able to evaluate talent. And then you really need to have a coach that you trust to be able to say, hey, I need this guy. Find me this type of player. That's what I need for this, because that's how it should work. All right, and I'm again right after this. I'm gonna tell you how acquisitions right now are currently working with the LA Galaxy,
Ooh.
and so then we can discuss that more. But what do you think about Sigi going to a GM? Do you think there would be a problem?
I think it's a very interesting analogy that he's making between what happened to Phil Jackson and what theoretically could happen to Ziggy or anyone in MLS. But I think in Ziggy's case, he has so much gravitas and experience that he would adjust predicated on who they did bring in as head coach. If it was someone where he thought that was a good idea, where he could try to successfully influence the team such that it would be more successful from that position, then he might try to do that. But if it was a bad idea and he thought it would cause disruptions and tensions and problems, then he wouldn't. I mean, he's a grown man. He looks like Winnie the Pooh, but he's actually, a grown man, very mature, a lot of experience, a lot of wisdom. I think that it would be very fact specific.
I agree. I think it's different. I don't know that Sigi is the GM type for a lot of these things, although I think that he can do it. But he certainly had some help up in Seattle eventually, actually both times, because he had a GM in Seattle on both cases. And then Garth Lagerwey I know very few general managers. I'm trying to do better about learning names and figuring out whether they're good or bad. So it's certainly a different thing where we go. I don't know if anybody has any questions on this. I'll give you a real brief window to go ahead and see if you can give us a call, and we'll try to take a call here. And
Jovan Kurowski, he looks like a wolf to me.
Like a wolf. What do you mean by a wolf?
Don't you think he has wolfish features?
Wolfish features. So
what
big eyes he has?
Ziggy's Winnie the Pooh, and Jovan Kurowski's a wolf.
Jovan.
And eventually I'm just going to give them all animals. They're all going to be animals.
Jovan. The J is a Y. Jovan Kurowski. Yes.
Jovan Kurowski. I think he looks like a wolf.
Yeah. Sure. I don't know. I've never really thought about it. You caught me off guard with it. Just a little bit anyway. Anyway, so that's sort of where we sit right now. I think it's going to be an interesting dynamic to see how it goes. I will tell you here, let's go and explain the LA Galaxy hierarchy. All right, just for a second. So that way I can get everybody, again, perhaps, just maybe you can stop bugging me.
Julian Schultz is at the top.
Yeah, and saying
the good people below him.
Good job. That was a good one. That was one I didn't even have on my list because I'm like, well, like he. Listen, I think Phil is very much not in the habit of making football decisions. I think Dan Beckerman is the same guy. I think they have to go to them for approval. So Chris Klein will go to them for approval if they're going to sign a big name player, something like a Jonathan Dos Santos or Giovanni Dos Santos or whoever they wanted to sign. That they have to go and get approval for that. But at the same time, I don't think Phil Anschutz is there saying, "Hey, Sigi, you should sign a guy like this," or "Hey, Pete, you should sign a guy like this." Like that. So that's not the play. And I don't think Dan Beckerman is that guy either. I don't think that either of those guys know soccer enough to be the guys making decisions, and that's not what's happening. Right now you have, in the LA Galaxy organization, you have Chris Klein, obviously, as the president. He's the number one. He is the guy who I think gets the general overall picture of the club, but I do not expect that he is making the technical, small who to acquire. He gives approval on who to acquire, but he's not out there searching for people to acquire because he's in charge of running the general business, and he has people who do the other things. All right, and if you're going to be an effective president, you can't micromanage people, so you do have to put people in positions to succeed and make you look smart. Pete Vianis is currently the general manager. I would say he was the number 2 under Chris Klein. Pete Vianis is the guy pulling strings and making the acquisitions, all right, along with Jovan Kurowski, who is finding some of these players and bringing them to Pete Vianis' attention. That is how players get acquired with the LA Galaxy. Sigi Schmidt, or previous to this, Cardinalfo, has some input into this, but they do not, and I believe this to be the case, certainly at the beginning of the year with Cardinalfo, but they do not, the coaches do not have the final say in who they're bringing in, which seems like that might be counterintuitive and may be a reason for some of these acquisitions for the LA Galaxy. So then you have the head coach, obviously, whether Cardinalfo or Sigi Schmidt, and then that person gets to hire their staff in terms of the coaching staff, and those people report to them. So there are groups and segregations within these, and certainly I think that you're going to look at Jovan Kurowski and Pete Vianis as being a group that is segregated by itself. And that they get input from people. And I certainly think that with Dominic Kinnear and Sigi Schmidt in there now, that there is a bunch more input and things that Pete and Jovan are having to listen to than it was whenever Cardinalfo was there. And whether that's because of the results or whether that's because of the gravitas of Sigi Schmidt and Dominic Kinnear, 2 of the most winningest coaches in Major League Soccer, that they are getting more play in front of Pete and Jovan Karofsky. So if you want to look at people, and we always try to do this, Wendy, we try to apportion blame in some of these situations. I would say that if you're looking at the construction of the team this year, and that goes from the very beginning, whenever Pete Vianis was hired, he was hired before Kurt Arnolfo. I think that you have to look at Pete Vianis and Jovan Karofsky in terms of who put this team together and who made the deals, because I am very well aware that there were people within the organization that were not always okay with the moves that they were making.
Wait a second. Did you say that you think that Pete Vianis was brought in before Kurt Arnolfo?
Yeah, he was.
Are you sure about that?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they hired. Because then they said that him and Pete were going to go on a coaching search and all this stuff. So I mean,
I'm gonna double check.
You can double check it, but yeah. But anyway, no. So I mean, that's how this has been going. But the other side of it doesn't really matter because both of those guys were already in house. Wendy.
No, I know. I mean, that's the thing. Is like you put them in a position, but who is actually? It's like one of those things. Like Pete Vianis was brought in to be to make acquisitions, but simultaneously with him being brought in, we made a series of acquisitions. I doubt that he had already done all the background work. I suspect that someone else had laid the foundation to acquire those players before Pete Vianis actually was in that position.
No, I would say no. I would say that they knew Bruce Arena was leaving, and as soon as they knew Bruce was leaving, that Pete Vianis was already the assistant general manager, remember? So he was already in on some of these. He was already the guy in that situation. So he was promoted, and then they went out and made these acquisitions. And I think that they already had an idea. And certainly, I think that Jovan Karofsky was already doing groundwork, as you would expect it to happen. But ultimately, it's the general manager who gets to make the go, no-go on these signings and whether they bring them in.
I'm going to research the timing on some of this here, make notes to myself, because if you look at our acquisitions, okay, Roman Alessandrini, that was awesome. Great acquisition, right? João Pedro, I like him. A lot of people don't seem to like him, but I like him.
Here's the thing with João Pedro is, I think $1 million or $1.5 million transfer fee. So you have to weigh that into what you're seeing. Now, granted, his salary is $150,000, but he's taking up targeted allocation money in order to be able to pay down that transfer fee. So just keep that in mind.
And then you have selling AJ, obviously, whoever did that. I just want 10 minutes alone with them in a room with no videos. Then there's Jermaine Jones, not so good. Not crazy about that.
And
if you look at it, there's a whole bunch of different acquisitions. And so you would say, well, some of these are definitely wins. Some of them are definitely losses. Some of them are sort of draws. I don't know. But I mean, I'm glad that maybe there's a little bit more oversight.
It seems like it, or at least there's more people in the room, having a vote in some of this stuff. I would say earlier in the season, there wasn't much of that. And I think that the acquisitions sort of look at that. I was trying to remember, Jermaine Jones was seen sitting on the court of the Lakers with, I believe, Pete Vianis and possibly Chris Klein at the time. I want to say it was either Chris Klein or Jovan Karofsky, and that was in the offseason when everybody was already like, hey, they were coming. So, the Galaxy had already acquired the rights to Jermaine Jones, and it was like, okay, this is probably happening, and, it all went down. So, I mean, there's certainly input there, but that's how these things go. And I would say that right now, if you're not giving a head coach like Sigi Schmidt and an assistant coach like Dominic Kinnear a vote into how these things are going, that you're not going to have any success in 2018. So if they're not going to change things around, and the LA Galaxy will be the worst LA Galaxy team in franchise history. It's basically already confirmed that will happen because the worst team was in 2008, which was 1.10 points per game. And and they're going to finish underneath that. There's no way they can actually finish above the 1.10. So
Phil was at a game recently. He was at the Toronto game. So is someone paying attention to this?
Yes.
Is someone?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, you have to think that that's the case, and Kevin Baxter wrote a good article talking about Phil Anschutz being there and that a meeting took place after that game, and in that meeting was Chris Klein, Pete Vianis, and Jovan Karofsky. So you had the leadership group, basically, of the LA Galaxy in that meeting room in a suite after the game, of which I don't believe Phil Anschutz was very happy with the result that he saw against Toronto, and nor could he be.
Nor would you be. I wish I could be a fly on the wall of that meeting.
Everybody does. I think Kevin and I were like, do we know anybody who would be in that
room?
Do
we know? Yeah. Do we know anyone who possibly cleans rooms at the suite there?
Exactly.
Like that?
Exactly. So anyway, that's sort of how acquisitions go. So whenever you say, hey, this person signed off on something, understand that in most cases there probably was, if it's above Pete Vianis, that there was probably a sign-off. And if it was below Pete Vianis, there probably wasn't a sign-off, all right, in that hierarchy, because that's how things had happened, at least leading up to this point. Again, I've been told that there seems to be more input now from the coaching staff, or at least more allowed input from the coaching staff. So we'll see if that's true and if that brings an increase in the success of the signings, because you were going through the signings. You got to Joao Pedro. You have to look at Pele Van Aanholt. You have to look at Michael Ciani already.
Yeah, Ciani. No, I mean, there's a whole bunch of them.
There is, and I think that right now you're missing more than you're hitting.
Jonathan Dos Santos.
Yeah, and Jonathan Dos Santos is a really good player. All right, he's a really good player. The Galaxy just didn't need another midfielder. That's where this ends up going. Like I don't blame. I understand. I do blame. I understand why you would want to bring somebody like Jonathan Dos Santos into the team, because he's an upgrade at that position. He's a good player. He had a very good game against Houston. That's good. Okay, great. So that's all great. But you already had a million midfielders, and you're going to have more whenever everybody gets healthy, and you have guys who are going to expect to start. I mean, Ima Boateng didn't start this game, Wendy, and I don't think he's going to start next year because he's probably a bench player. But having said that, he's also probably a very valuable trade person if you wanted to get something and realizing that you have too many midfielders. So do you want to bring in Jonathan Dos Santos for somebody like Ima Boateng? Because that could eventually be what it ends up being. All right, so anyway, that's just sort of a little aside there. Just real quick, heads up, Jonathan Dos Santos and Giovanni Dos Santos both called up to the Mexican national team for World Cup qualifiers versus Trinidad and Tobago and Honduras. That's on October 6th versus Trinidad and Tobago, and at Honduras on October 10th. They will leave after the LA Galaxy's game on September 30th against Real Salt Lake, so the Galaxy are abiding by the international break, so they will not be missing these guys for any games, all right? So not that it really matters at this point anymore, but it's, if you're going to go to the last 3 games, the last 2 home games, then you want to see them. Absolutely. So that's pretty simple there. The other thing is that I failed to mention last time, and we'll have a lot of information on this, is that they're bringing wireless connections to StubHub Center, and that's coming in, and obviously that's part of, I think, the Chargers being there and everything else, but it's something that has been missing from StubHub Center for years, and things that have been asked about for years since I've been in the press box talking about wireless connectivity for fans. And it seems like it's actually happening. So that I think that's a positive for anybody who's saying, hey, I would like to be able to share photos faster. I'd like to be able to get stats. There's a whole bunch of really specific things that are going on that will allow, I think, Galaxy fans to have a better in-stadium experience for next year in 2018. So that's a positive. We'll take it with that. Are you a big fan of the wireless in the stadium, Wendy?
I was just thinking, I don't know if they do this in the men's room. In some of the women's room at the StubHub Center, there's a television screen built into the sink where you wash your hands after you go to the bathroom. Do they have that in the men's room?
You're probably asking the wrong person. I do go to everybody's like, oh, he uses the bathroom in the press box, and I don't. I actually use one.
Fancy pants.
Yeah, I know. I don't. I actually use the one that is for the rest of the people who are on the upper concourse there. And there is no televisions in that one. I don't know if there are any in the downstairs.
I don't think it's a television. I think it's a little video screen that shows advertisements. And I was looking at that and I was saying, what on earth were the Galaxy thinking when they decided to do this with their money as opposed to wireless? Why the television screens in the sinks? What is that about?
If you can sell that spot to somebody and somebody wants to pay for that, I'm all for it. I'm never going to pay attention to it. What do I care? I would like to see games being broadcast in there. So if you do have to use the restroom while you're going, and I know some professional stadiums around different professional sports have that ability to be able to watch the game while you're washing your hands or while you're using the facilities, as they say. So yeah.
Well, unless you're Josh, Mr. Fancy Pants, and you get to use Chris Klein's private. Lavatory.
I've never been invited to that. I imagine it's gold plated and it's got a heated seat and all sorts of amazing things. Yes,
the lap of luxury.
That's absolutely. I just have to go with the rest of the people using the suites. I guess. I don't know. Maybe it's. Trust me, it's no different than the ones that are downstairs. I've been to both. All right, they're about the same. So no big deal. Just real quickly, the playoff picture. I know I know the Galaxy are out of it, but I just wanted to sort of let you know who's in it, because if you're a fan of the Galaxy, maybe you're a fan of MLS too, and you still want to watch it. So right now, only in the Eastern Conference have you had teams clinch spots. Toronto, New York City, Atlanta, and Chicago have all clinched a playoff berth. The only teams eliminated so far have been DC United, who were eliminated first out of the Eastern Conference. Colorado got eliminated second when they lost to Dallas, and then the LA Galaxy were eliminated from playoff contention third. Real quickly, Wendy, I put together this wonderful list, and it took a lot of research. Actually, it just took a lot of data input. It's not a lot of research, but I'll update it as we go. But I put together a list of the worst teams in Major League Soccer history according to points per game. And I am right now, and basically I gave myself a cap. So if you were over, or if you were 1.00 points per game or under, I put you on this list. And then I sorted that list to figure out who was the worst. All right.
Is this going to make me really sad?
I don't know if it will or not. I will tell you that there are two teams that are mentioned so often here it's almost laughable.
Okay.
I will give you one guess as to who one of those two teams are. There are two teams.
Chicago.
Chicago is actually not as bad as you would think they are. They are a bad team, but
Colorado.
Colorado not on there as much, and they're one of the originals.
Are you going back to like Tampa Bay Mutiny?
No, because they weren't even around that long. You really have to think about the teams who have been around that long and who have been really, really bad for the consistent amount of time. And one of them, DC United is on this list a couple times. Okay, but I don't even think they're the most. It's the New England Revolution.
Aww.
Right, and Chivas USA, and Chivas wasn't even around that long. But, but Chivas USA. The worst team in Major League Soccer history, according to the research that I've done, and if I made any mistakes, let me know, because again, this was data input to the nth degree. It's the number one team, worst team in Major League Soccer was the Metro Stars. That's before they were the New York Red Bulls. The 99 Metro Stars had 15 points, 32 games played, a points per game total of 0.47, 7 wins, 25 losses. And of course, this was in the shootout era, so there were no draws. 7 wins, 25 losses. Okay, so that was pretty bad, 0.47. But I can actually give you a modern era that ties that points per game. So the 2013 DC United team, 16 points, 34 games played, 0.47 points per game, 3 wins all year in league. They lost 24 games and they drew 7. You know what they did win that year, though, Wendy?
What?
The U.S. Open Cup. So, so you look at it. Tampa Bay Mutinies here with 14 points. Chivas USA, the 05 Chivas USA team with 18 points. The Kansas City Wizards with 20 points. Real Salt Lake with 20 points. 05. I will tell you right now, the 2017 LA Galaxy, as they stand on points per game alone right now, are in 24th position on this particular sheet. All right, it's the only place where the LA Galaxy actually fall into this particular list. So it's just one. Colorado Rapids 2017 right now, they are actually lower than the LA Galaxy, so they're also on this list as well in the 18th position. So there are 24 teams that have been worse than the LA Galaxy right now according to points per game, but I do expect that points per game to go down a little bit, so we'll see where the LA Galaxy finish at the end of all of it. I think that's kind of fun. Anyway.
That's a record.
It's a record. Yep. They've already given up 61 goals. 62 is the record in 2008, so keep an eye on that. That should probably fall as well. Let's see. Let's get on to this game against Real Salt Lake. Just a little bit, give you a little bit of a preview for it. It is Saturday, September 30th, 2017. This game is not, even though it says broadcast on Spectrum Sportsnet and Spectrum Deportes, it is not being broadcast there. It is being broadcast, as they say, and I will try to quote it as best I can, on a Spectrum Sportsnet alternative. What does that mean? I have no idea, but there is a list, and if you go on the LA Galaxy's website, they will be able to point you in the direction of where you can watch this game if you're not going to be there. For me, being I am a Time Warner Cable Legacy customer, it's on the Spectrum Community Channel in the greater Los Angeles area on channels 84 and 164, so not on the Sportsnet channels. So I just wanted to give everybody a heads up on that because you're going to I know I'm going to get to the stadium on Saturday. It's going to be about 7 o'clock, and everybody's going, wait a minute, there's a Lakers preseason game on or something like that. All right, so that, or maybe the Sparks championship is on or something like that. Okay, those are. Listen, the ratings aren't good for the LA Galaxy. They haven't been basically since they started this time. So don't be surprised. All right, so all right, this game 7:30 p.m. I would suggest you be at this game if you so choose to be. One of the two last chances that you're going to get. You get this game and then a Minnesota United game coming up on October 15th. So that's it for the home games for the LA Galaxy, and the season ends on the 22nd of October. One of the earliest ends for the LA Galaxy in a recent memory for me. I started covering the team in 2009, so the first year without the playoffs, really, for me. This is a Real Salt Lake team that obviously beat the Galaxy 6-2 on July 4th. We talked about that. This is the team that also lost at home to the LA Galaxy 2-1 earlier in the year, but it is a team that has been a lot better than they were at the beginning of the year. They're 12-14-5, 41 points. They're 5th in the Western Conference, currently above the red line. RSL's 4-10-1 on the road, 13 points. Just that. So their road record not that great, and everybody so far, Wendy, it's been the road team winning these matchups, all right? They previously played against Seattle on September 23rd, so they've had some time off. They did not have a midweek game, and they beat Seattle 2-0 over the Sounders. So now they're getting ready for the LA Galaxy, and they are hot and heavy into this playoff race. And if you think they're coming in and not looking for 17 points, then you'd be out of your mind. And with a tired LA Galaxy team, I think I've already put that warning out. The LA Galaxy could be primed, Wendy, to get smacked again by Real Salt Lake. It's interesting. RSL has been such a much better team ever since Jeff Kazar was let go, and now you have Mike Petke in charge, and they really have responded to that. So they're a dangerous team. They're one of these teams that could probably go far in the playoffs. I just think it's a really interesting matchup, and one that I personally do not expect the LA Galaxy to win. What are your thoughts on Real Salt Lake?
Yes, I do not expect the LA Galaxy to win this game. But weather's probably going to be pretty nice. So
why not be there, right?
So, you could go.
That's absolutely. You should definitely get out there. It's interesting, again, just to see whether Gyasi Zardes plays right back again. Bradley Diallo is at least questionable. I do not expect him to play, but that changes as the week goes by. And being the fact the guys weren't near training and they've been on a 3-game road trip, it's been difficult to sort of touch bases to see how everybody is doing because there hasn't been a lot of training time with these guys. So the LA Galaxy are in 10th place in the Western Conference, 0.90 points per game right now. They have a minus 21 goal differential, which is 11 goals different than their worst ever, which was, I believe, in 2008. They had a minus 11, or excuse me, a minus 10 in 2008. So, I mean, they're setting all sorts of new records. They've already set a franchise record for most losses in a season. They'll set a franchise record, it looks like, for goal differential. And by the way, just a little heads up, Wendy, I'm not trying to pick sides here or anything, but whenever Kurt Onalfo was fired, his goal differential was minus 3. Sigi Schmidt has added the rest of those. So, just in case you wanted to see, a lot of shutouts, a lot of 4-0 victories, some more difficult teams, but also Kurt had to face some teams that were difficult at the beginning of the year. So, like FC Dallas. So, FC Dallas is horrible right now. They've tail spinning. People think that Oscar Pereira's job might even be in question, which is humorous to me. Why would you want to do that? But anyway, this is the last game of the season. Could be interesting for the Galaxy going against a bad FC Dallas team that could be out of the playoffs. So there's lots of interesting takes on all these games going down the rest of the thing. But for me, this RSL game, they have a lot of talent. They seem to be motivated. They seem to be pushing towards the playoffs. And they're tied with everybody right there at the Western Conference, right at the red line. So there's basically 4 teams, I think, that are battling for 2 spots.
Salt Lake, FC Dallas, Houston, and San Jose.
Yeah, and the Western Conference is where it's at, Wendy. If you want to look at, being entertained by these games down the stretch, that would be the ones to take a look at. So that's where we go. 7:30 p.m. kickoff time again on Saturday. So I really think that's it. Is there anything else that you wanted to touch on with this LA Galaxy team or anything else?
No, I hope everyone has a wonderful weekend.
That's wonderful. And I want to make sure everybody got a chance to order their shirts. All right. I will put it in the notes, but you guys are blowing my mind with the amount of shirts that you ordered. I think we have up to 53 orders. Yeah, which means I bought a tank top because I will be having to do this show in a tank top.
Josh, you have to show us.
Yeah, the Guns Out show.
I think that the Corner of the Galaxy fans would insist on you taking a picture of yourself and putting it on Twitter of you in a Corner of the Galaxy tank.
Yeah, as soon as I get it, there's all the shirts are supposed to ship October 2nd. There's about 2 days left. October 10th is when they're supposed to ship. So there's about 2 days left in the campaign. Then those shirts get printed and then they get shipped out. So, we're down to the final minutes here and you guys have blown me away. So you can go to bonfire.com and search for Corner of the Galaxy and you'll find our shirts there right there. You can go on our website, which I put it on a whole bunch of things. You can go on Twitter. And if you go on the notes to this podcast, I'll make sure that I put that in there as well so you can buy those shirts. All right.
And then we get a picture of you in a tank top, guns out. Gun show. Suns out, guns out,
Corner of the Galaxy show there. It should be. I apologize in advance to anybody who has to watch that. That's one maybe that people don't want to get the YouTube on.
Listen to the podcast and don't know. Josh and I are white.
Yeah, it's super.
We are cockazoidal to the max.
I was going to say, Jared once called me pigmentally challenged, and I agree with that 100%. So that's how it goes. So that's what you'll get to see. Might have to turn down the white balance on that. We'll see how it all goes. But anyway, no, that's it. The LA Galaxy obviously eliminated from the playoffs. We're still here. We're still doing shows up until the end of the season. And quite honestly, we're going to do shows into the offseason as well, because I expect there to be movement. Will there be as often? Probably not as often, but I mean, you might count on one once a week. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, that's where we're at with the LA Galaxy. 3 games left now. Pride in sort of trying to figure out what it is for 2018. All right, Wendy, why don't you tell people where they can find you, and we'll get on out of here.
You can find me at Corner of the Galaxy in American Soccer Now and on Twitter at Bardsworn.
All right, if you're looking for me on Twitter, it's at Guesman, JGUESMAN, and of course at Galaxy Podcast. That's where you can find me as well. Also, head on over to cornerofthegalaxy.com. That's where you can find all of our writings, all of our podcasts, all of the shirts if you want to order. There's merchandise. We have stickers, I think, for sale, although I'm going to be giving some out here pretty soon. So if you see me on the game on Saturday, I have stickers. Come see me, say hi, tweet at me, and I'll try to make an arrangement so that way you can get a sticker, all right? Let's see. That's about it. LA Galaxy, Real Salt Lake on Saturday, September 30th, 7:30 p.m. kickoff time. Hope to see everybody there. For Miss Wendy Thomas, I'm Josh Guesman. You've been listening to Corner of the Galaxy on cornerofthegalaxy.com. Have a great one, everybody.
You've been listening to the Corner of the Galaxy podcast on cornerofthegalaxy.com. You can follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at Galaxy Podcast. And be sure to check out and subscribe to iTunes, Stitcher, and Facebook by searching for Corner of the Galaxy. And for all of your independent LA Galaxy news, discussion, and entertainment, including this podcast, head on over to cornerofthegalaxy.com. Fans, thanks for listening. We ask that you be kind and courteous to your neighbors as you leave the podcast. We thank you for joining us and look forward to seeing you again. Until then, I'm Michael Araujo, and on behalf of the entire Corner of the Galaxy crew, goodbye, everybody.